Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm talking about another episode from season 6. This is episode 16, The Festival. If you are enjoying these, please do hit like and subscribe. This episode was directed by Gwen Arner and was written by Michael McGreevy, who played Hobie Shanks in the episode The Braggart, and his father, John McGreevy, was responsible for quite a few Walton episodes over the seasons. This episode has two sort of main storylines going on. The main one is about racism and features Harley and Verdi and their two sons, Josh and Jody. And that is set against a little love triangle featuring Amy and Elizabeth and a new boy in town. Early in the episode, Olivia's in the garden and Verdi comes by, and Verdi is a little upset because she has just found out that Jody has joined the Navy, and so she's naturally, as a mother, very worried about him and what he's going to face there, and her fear that perhaps he won't come home. We see Jason at the Dewdrop Inn playing piano, rehearsing, and he suddenly hears a trumpet. And he goes to explore, and it is Josh playing the trumpet. And Josh says that, when there was somebody when Josh was homeless, and at some place that there was an older gentleman who taught him how to play the trumpet. And this is an old trumpet that Harley had, and he has pulled it out and is playing it. Now, I have been asked whether James Bond III, who played Josh in this episode, whether he was actually playing the trumpet, and he was not. So all of that trumpet that we hear would have been pre-recorded by somebody who was probably a studio musician that they brought in to play that. And then James would just be sort of, faking the fingering on it. But he did a really good job for somebody like me who doesn't play trumpet, doesn't know what it should look like. To me, it looked really authentic, and I expect anyone who really plays trumpet could probably tell that what they were hearing and what he was doing wasn't exactly accurate. But I'm happy to just be an uninformed audience. And of course, John Walmsley really could play the piano as long as it wasn't too complicated and too classical a piece. So in this case, I believe this was all John actually playing, and potentially playing live is my best guess. I mentioned a love triangle, and this is with George Simmons, who is a new boy in town. And Amy seems to be having no trouble talking with George, but Elizabeth, who likes him, it just completely freezes her, and she can't seem to get words out. And so she keeps sort of running away and doesn't know what to do. And there's a really sweet scene where Aaron is brushing out Elizabeth's hair, and Elizabeth is asking Aaron for advice on how to attract a boy, or what to do if she likes a boy. And Aaron gives Elizabeth various different advice on handling boys. Aaron has also shared with Jason that he has been asked about potentially playing for the spring festival that is coming up. And so Jason goes by to meet with the woman from the festival, who says that, yes, they're very interested in having Jason play. He was recommended by the conservatory, by Kleinberg, where he goes to school, but that, of course, he will need to audition, which Jason says is perfectly fine with him. We see Harley, Verdi, and Josh seeing Jody off on the bus as he heads off to not enlist, he's already enlisted, but to go report for the Navy. So a little bittersweet moment there for the family. Then Josh goes by to visit John. So we get to see that relationship again, and how sweet that was from the initial time when we saw Josh when he arrived on Walton's Mountain, and what a wonderful relationship he had with John, and how he really wanted to stay and be part of the Walton family. But it's nice to see that relationship still continuing on between John and Josh. Once again, there is music in the living room, and we are dancing. I am dancing with John Curtis as Jason and Josh play. And this, again, allows the camera to move around and sort of sets up the scene. And I just always think these are much more fun than just a static shot where everybody's just kind of sitting around. So this kind of adds movement to it, which works really well with the music. Verdi and Harley talk about the potential struggles that Jody will have in the Navy as a Black man, and what the world is like at this time, and how much racism is an issue for them. And Harley's a little inclined to say we just keep to our place and we don't engage and try and push our way at all into the white world, and that way we won't have trouble. And Verdi's a little more like, no, times won't change unless we push and we, in a way, demand that times change. So they're a little on slightly opposite sides of that issue. And then Harley discovers that Josh has snuck out of the house and finds him outside the Dewdrop Inn playing his trumpet, and he's not happy with Josh. And Josh is like, I'm not bothering anybody. I'm not going inside. I'm not causing trouble. And Harley's still, not happy about that, but he agrees that this will stay between him and Josh and that they won't tell Verdi. But he is, I think, doing extra chores for being bad. Jason comes across Josh and invites him to come along with him. He's going to be rehearsing at the Dewdrop Inn. And he tells Josh it's okay, no one's around, he can come in. And Verdi comes by to deliver something to the Dewdrop that she has been doing, whether it's placemats or napkins or something. But she discovers Jason and Josh playing, and Jason has asked Josh to play with him at the festival, and Verdi is very angry with Josh about sneaking behind her back and about all of this. But Josh talks with his parents, and he does get permission to play at the festival. At the audition, Jason is playing piano, and he plays a classical piece, which may not have been John actually playing, because John said sometimes some of those pieces were a little beyond his piano skills. I mean, as a guitarist, he's fabulous, but piano is not his primary instrument. So while he can play, he's sometimes said that those were pieces that he just didn't have enough time to perfect them in a way that he was happy with. But after Jason does his classical piece, which the members of the committee are very happy with, then he invites Josh out to play a piece with him. And of course, it's a beautiful piece, but afterwards he is told that the ladies' committee, doesn't think they're right, or that his selections were too long and they should cut something. And so they think that they should cut the piece with the boy on the trumpet. And Jason's like, well, I'd rather keep that one and cut something else. And basically they come finally around to saying, no, they do not want a colored boy performing in their festival. And so Jason, that per their traditions, that doesn't suit their mandate. And so Jason is basically says, he's not going to play then. Josh gets Jason to admit that that's what it was about, that, they didn't want him because he is colored. And he says that Jason should take the job because it pays, and that, just take it without Josh. But Jason doesn't want to do that. But obviously, Josh is very hurt by all of this, and we see him in the evening outside quite upset, and he throws his trumpet off into the woods, but he won't really tell his parents what happened. Back at the Walton house, in the kitchen, around the dinner table, or whatever meal we're eating or not eating or finished or starting, just more in the Walton kitchen. Anyway, Jason is telling them kind of what's happened, and so they collectively decide that they're all going to get on board with creating their own festival at Godsey's Hall. And so everybody's, talking about what they can do to help bring this about, and everybody's on board. So Jason goes to Verdi and basically tells them what they're planning, and really wants Josh to come play at their festival. And Verdi is really struggling with this part of changing the future for Black people. And she would really like Josh to go to the festival because she feels that this is, important towards, for their people going forward. And Josh shares with Harley about John saying that maybe in 10 years things would be different, and that John and Olivia could have, adopted Josh. And that's true in today's world. That would have been easy to do. But how John recognized that at that point in time in the 1940s, that was, going to make life more difficult all the way around. And for Josh, it wasn't really in his best interests either. Josh has said he is not going to play at the festival and, isn't playing. And John finds him and he challenges him to prove that he's as good as anyone else, which is how Josh feels about himself. Josh wants to be treated and feels he's as good as anyone else. And John says, basically you are, and prove it. So, Josh now has that decision to make. Elizabeth has gone through all sorts of struggles in this possible relationship with George, and she can't talk to him, and then she says stupid things, and George is very confused, and she doesn't know what to do. And he talks about how he likes ice cream, and Elizabeth kind of is non-committal, and then she says, well, maybe she does. And anyway, at the festival, George brings Elizabeth ice cream and sits with her, and she admits that she likes him and that makes her awkward. And then George, kind of reciprocates and says, wow, you're really very honest. And he likes that. And he admits that he likes her too. And then Amy comes and sits down, and Elizabeth basically goes, he's mine. So it's cute because it's evident that George likes Elizabeth. And so it's fun to see that they kind of work through that. Although I don't think we ever saw George again. So he was very short-lived, but he made for a sweet little story for Elizabeth and Amy. As the festival is proceeding and Jason is playing and the family is there, as are members of the community, and we suddenly hear the trumpet. And Josh comes in playing the trumpet and joins Jason and, Harley and Verdi, and Jody has come back too. And Jody is loving the Navy and feels great and is being accepted and is completely winning in that environment, which is really good for Harley and Verdi to see. And so now then to see Josh also taking a leap of faith and being so accepted by members of the community and their appreciation of his talent. So it is a big success, and John is there to share that moment of triumph with Josh as well, and he's very, very proud of him. So just a happy ending all around in this moment in time, and that just showing that hope for the future and the change that will be coming and that we all know has come. And we still have a long way to go, but we have certainly taken important strides forward. Our various different guest stars in this episode were, of course, Hal Williams and Lynn Hamilton were back as Harley and Verdi. And I will be speaking with Harley very soon. So this was a fitting episode just in future of Hal and my conversation, which be sure and watch that. And then, as I mentioned, James Bond III took over for Todd Bridges when Todd Bridges left to do his series. So we were happy to have James with us, however briefly. Jody at this point, who's a little more grown up, was played by T.K. Carter. Of course, Ronnie Claire was back as Corbeth, but we didn't see Joe Connolly in this episode. So we saw Corbeth, but not Ike. So whether there was nothing written in it for Ike, or whether Joe Conley was unavailable, so they didn't include him. I don't know. Amy was Rachel Longacre, back with us once again. Mrs. Wilkins was played by Kathleen O'Malley in this episode. She was the head of the committee. Now, I took a look at her, and she actually did 4 episodes of The Waltons. She was in season 1, The Bicycle, as Sarah Tyler. She was in season 2, The Prize, as the Quilt Lady. In season 2, The Substitute, as Ethel Richardson, and then here in The Festival. George Simmons was played by Steve Shaw. Now, Steve went on to play Eric Fargate in 107 episodes of Knots Landing before he was tragically killed in a car accident at 25. And the episode of Knots Landing, entitled An American Hero, was dedicated to him, and Michelle Lee, who was one of the stars of that show, sang the closing song during the credits. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Behind the Scenes of The Waltons about the season 6 episode, The Festival. I'll be back with more Behind the Scenes of The Waltons, more Ask Judy, and more special guests. As I mentioned, Hal Williams coming up very shortly, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching.